Anybody of you want to continue reading? One of you can volunteer. Hare Krishna, anybody?
Yeah, Prabhuji, I'll read out.
Yeah, who is this, Prabhu?
Ram Mohan.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
So
From
that
the
paragraph you
line
can.
the Vedas, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
So the Vedas are not compilations of human knowledge. Vedic knowledge comes from the spiritual word from Lord Krishna. Another name for the Vedas is Shruti. Shruti refers to the knowledge which is acquired by hearing. It is not experimental knowledge. Shruti is considered to be like a mother. We take so much knowledge from our mother. For example, if you want to know who your father is, who can answer you? Your mother. If the mother says, "Here is your father," you have to accept it. It is not possible to experiment to find out whether he is your father. Similarly, if you want to know something beyond your experience, beyond your experimental knowledge, beyond the activities of senses, then you have to accept the Vedas. There is no question of experimenting. It has always been experimented. It is already settled. The version of the mother, for instance, has to be accepted as truth. There is no other way.
Okay.
If you
Thank you,
make,
Prabhu. Yeah, you can continue. No. Yes, Prabhu.
can I continue?
Yeah, I think there are not much volunteers, so you can continue. Looks like
Okay,
just
okay.
just a moment. Yeah.
Yeah. If you make experimental endeavor, you come to the same conclusion, but just to save time, you should accept. If you want to know who your father is, and if you accept your mother as the authority, then whatever she says can be accepted without argument. There are three kinds of evidence: pratyaksha, anumana, and shabda. Pratyaksha means direct evidence. Direct evidence is not very good because our senses are not perfect. We are seeing the sun daily and it appears to us just like a small disk, but it is actually far, far larger than many planets. Of what value is the seeing? Therefore, we have to read books. Then we can understand about the sun. So, direct experience is not perfect. Then there is Anumana, inductive knowledge. It is like this hypothesis, for instance, Darwin's theory says it may be like this, it may be like that, but this is not science. This is a suggestion and it is also not perfect. But if you receive the knowledge from the authoritative sources, that is perfect. If you receive a program guide from the radio station authorities, you accept it. You don't deny it. You don't have to make an experiment because it is received from the authoritative sources. Vedic knowledge is called Sabda Pramana. Another name is Shruti. Shruti means that this knowledge has to be received simply by oral reception. The Vedas instruct that in order to understand transcendental knowledge, we have to hear it from the authority. Transcendental knowledge is knowledge from beyond this universe. Within this universe is material knowledge, and beyond this universe is transcendental knowledge. All this knowledge is there, but how will you make experiments? It is not possible. Therefore, you have to take the assistance of the Vedas. This is called Vedic knowledge. Adapted from Introduction to Enopanishad by His Highness A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you, Raman Prabhu, for reading. Okay, so this is the topic we are going to discuss. So yeah, normally what we do is that we will make some points, each of us, and then we discuss. But here actually we can also do that, but no, there are some limitations because we are doing online. So maybe what we can do is that we can go paragraph by paragraph. Okay, we can try to understand what is mentioned in each paragraph. So in the first paragraph, anybody has any questions? So it is defining what is Veda, right? And then the subsequent first 2, 3, 4 paragraphs actually talks about basically talks about Vedas. Then it talks about the two kind of living entities: conditioned and liberated living entities. And then it talks about the four defects no, that a conditioned living entity has. Okay, so we'll try to make it little interactive, because otherwise no, it will become a monologue. So, can anybody say, what is the understanding of Vedas? What does Veda means? What does Veda mean? Anybody want to attempt? Okay, without seeing
That
the
which
screen,
has
they would.
got no human source or something like that.
Yeah. Yes, there are multiple meanings. So yeah, here actually the basic fundamental meaning of Veda means knowledge. Uh, just simply, no, Veda means knowledge. Here it is defined, no. And then yeah, what Mataji told actually, no, it's about transcendental knowledge, right? Which actually the Vedic knowledge is considered as also transcendental knowledge. So what do you mean by transcendental knowledge? Anybody wants to try?
Is it
That
something
which
knowing about
takes
the
us.
Yes, Mataji, something not.
Prabhuji, is it something knowing about the real truth, like about God or
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
parampara?
That is true. Yeah, this is Nivedita
That,
Mataji. Yeah?
Yes, yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, Harishna. Yeah, so that is true. Anybody else want to try?
taking the consciousness from body to the source.
Yeah, that's also true. Yes. So what actually acharyas how they define transcendental knowledge is that which is beyond the senses. Okay, the knowledge which is beyond our senses, material senses, is known as transcendental. So whatever all that, I think these topics we have discussed in the beginning, but actually no, it is very important to understand again. There's no harm in repeating. So all the knowledge which is there in the material world, right? That actually the normally a living entity perceives is known as the material knowledge. So this material knowledge is the knowledge that we acquire through our five senses. We have five. We not have this panchendriyas. No, what are the five senses? We have eyes, nose, right, ear, tongue, and touch. Through actually the living entity, every living entity's perception about the world is actually received through the sense. So basically, the senses are like windows to the existence, and so every living entity may have a different perception about the world actually which they are in. Uh, so no, actually we discussed in the beginning, right? So for example, something like, for example, a bat actually can navigate using the sound. Like we see this ultrasound, we do the ultrasound testing, right? People undergo the test, sonography, and then we get a picture like which looks like a black and white actually, but it is not the real representation, but it is one of the ways of representing our internal organs, for example, using ultrasound, right? So when the bat actually perceives the world around, actually it may perceiving something similar to that. It has a picture which is made out of sound waves, reflecting different sound waves. I know it has a particular perception. It understands the obstacles and things like that. So this is the bat's perception. Similarly, every living entity has a different perception about the world. By the perception is limited by the senses which they have during the senses. For example, plants doesn't have eyes, etc., right? But it has some way of understanding the stimuli. For example, we see that the plants actually, if you keep a plant, it actually generally seeks the sunlight. It grows in such a way that it moves toward the sunlight. So like that, so different living entities have different perception about the material world. And then, but every living entity is convinced that his perception is perfect, and then they are not ready to accept anything beyond their perception. So that is the same problem with human beings also. So we are not ready to accept something which actually we cannot perceive. So we think that all that we see is is the complete picture, and this is the perfect understanding. So this knowledge which actually the living entity perceives by its material senses is the normal material knowledge. And what is transcendental? By definition, transcendental is that which is beyond the senses. So the knowledge which actually, not only knowledge, anything which is beyond our senses is known as transcendental. And so spiritual knowledge is actually by definition because we understand, right, difference between matter and spirit. So the matter is that which is perceived by material senses, and spirit is something by definition which cannot be perceived by our material senses. So matter and spirit that way are opposite, or no, it can say they are orthogonal. So similarly, transcendental is also like that. They are orthogonal actually. So spiritual knowledge can only be understood by the source, what we are discussing today, right? The only way of understanding spiritual knowledge is through uh, scriptures, Vedic scripture, authentic Vedic scriptures, right? For the Vedas, for example. So now we'll go further actually. So this is the fundamental idea, right? So transcendental knowledge is that knowledge actually which is beyond the material senses, which cannot be perceived by material senses. That is known as transcendental. So the Supreme Lord, the spiritual aspects, all these are transcendental knowledge, right? Because the living entity we have discussed earlier, no, the living entity now it is in the temporary covering of the body. The living entity who is actually spiritual is embodied in this material body, but actually by the influence of Maya, uh, by the influence of Maya, one second. Yeah, by the influence of Maya, the living entity thinks that he is the body, and then he forgets his original identity as a spiritual entity. So that is known as Maya, the illusion, right? By which every living entity. So this is by design that living entity, when they comes to the material world, they are given a particular body, and then they are convinced that they are the body, and then every activity of the living entity is revolving around the concept of the bodily consumption, right? So this is by definition, actually all of us, every living entity is actually spiritual, right? And but temporarily we are in the material perception or material realm, okay, and then we forget our original identity. So to understand our original spiritual identity, which is also the spirit and spiritual, so the living entity is actually spiritual, and similarly Supreme Lord, we are actually, all the living entities are part and parcel of the supreme absolute truth, right? We actually acharyas understand, explain to us that the supreme Brahman is actually Sri Krishna, who is the original personality of Godhead. And other things, like for example, the Brahman is just an effulgence, or the light which actually comes from Brahma Jyoti, and Brahman is just another representation of the Supreme Lord. But actually the original supreme personality of Godhead is actually a person. We have seen that. No, we have seen Lord Brahma is explaining that shloka, which is very famous, where he says that Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. So Krishna, Brahma says that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a Vigraha. Vigraha means a person, right? And then the Brahman actually is just an evolution. So we have also seen that the three levels of realization of absolute truth: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So anyway, that is little different, out of topic. So let us come back to the focus. One second.
Prabhuji, I just joined.
Raman Prabhu.
Yes.
Okay.
I have to switch off the video, is it?
Video you can switch off and mute. I think it's a problem with here, I think. You can try to mute. I think you and Mataji, they're sitting together nearby. Hare Krishna. Okay, fine. So are you still able to, everybody's able to hear me, na?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes. So if two people are sitting together, no, nearby, then actually that there can be an echo. So a little bit you have to be careful. Only when you mute, because both the microphones, sound will come and it creates an echo. So
It's fine.
maybe like
It's fine now. Yeah.
okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so let us go ahead. So this part is clear until now, right? So what is the difference between a conditioned soul and liberated soul? Okay, so that is the next point actually. So the conditioned soul is actually somebody who is conditioned by the material existence. So whoever is under, anybody who is under the influence of Maya or the external energy, Maya is the external energy of the Lord, and the material world is actually under the control of Maya. Maya Devi, she, her personal representation is Durga, but actually her energy is the material energy, by which the material world is working. So any living entity which is under the influence of Maya is known as the conditioned soul, right? So the conditioned souls thinks that they are in the bodily conception. They think that they are the body. Okay, so these are the conditioned soul, and the liberated soul are the souls who are actually not under the control of Maya. So this we have discussed in the previous session. So they are known as Nitya Baddhas and Nitya Siddhas. So Nitya Baddhas are the conditioned living entity, right? Who are the normal, most of the majority of the living entities in the material world. They are actually Nitya Baddhas. Uh, and the living entities who actually come with us from the spiritual world, So many of the incarnations of the Lord and his associates, they actually descend from the spiritual world just to help the Lord. That they are never under the influence of the Maya. So they are known as Nitya Siddhas. So what we are seeing is that I think one of the microphone. No, I think we are getting a sound. Huh? Sujata Mataji, can you mute your microphone? Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you. So, so Nitya, so this is clear, Nitya Baddhas and Nitya Siddhas, right? So now what we are next point is that the all the living and conditioned souls, right, Nitya Baddhas, they are actually having the four defects. So everybody in the material world, right, who are under the influence of Maya, they are having the four defects. So what are the four defects? So one is to commit mistakes. Yes, the first one is to commit mistakes. So this I think is I think I don't need any I don't have to explain it, right? So all of us knows, and then in our general literature also this statement is there, to err is human, right? So everybody understand that actually living entities are subjected to subjected to committing mistakes. Yeah. Hmm. Yes. So to commit mistakes is one of the defects of the living entity, right? And second one is to be illusion. To illusion actually, right? So one of the greatest illusion of the living entity we already discussed is
We
uh,
are the
yeah, thinking that we are the body, right? That is one illusion. And there are other illusions we know, right? There are optical illusions, for example, right? There is something called mirage, like in the desert there is a feeling that there is water, right? Because of some optical phenomena like total internal reflection, basically whatever it is. So basically, it gives an impression that there is water actually in the desert where actually there is no water, right? So this is one example of illusion. So but in general, the concept of illusion is there, and the biggest illusion is thinking that we are the body. So this is also nobody can overcome it, because the material energy of the Lord is very powerful, and it is not by mistake that actually these qualities are there. It is all intended actually. The design of the material world is like that. We have discussed that in the beginning, that why do we come to the material world, right? That we have discussed earlier. Because the living entity had a desire to enjoy independently, the Lord has created a material world for the living entity to enjoy in their means, like just like a child wants to live away from the father, right? And then the design of the place is such that no, you have to get in, you will naturally become frustrated actually. So that is by design. So that is the design of the material world, right? So these qualities are actually by design, right? So it's not possible, we cannot find anybody who is completely free from the four defects in the material world. So one is to commit mistakes, second is to be illusion. Okay, the third defect is the cheating propensity. So cheating propensity, anybody has any doubt regarding cheating propensity? If anybody disagrees, then we can discuss. Otherwise, if everybody agrees, then maybe we don't have to discuss.
We agree, Prabhuji.
Okay. Yeah, but actually there are some subtle cheating actually. See, sometimes no, we ourselves don't know that we may be cheating. Okay, so there are different levels of cheating. So one cheating is what we see in our day-to-day lives, right? Various false promises. For example, they advertise so many products saying that okay, this can, like for example, there may be a product which says that no, it can cure baldness. So many people are suffering from baldness, right? And you can see so many commercials, so many advertisements saying that okay, there may be some oil. They say okay, use it and your baldness will go. Okay, so this is one of the thing. And maybe some couples doesn't have children, and then they may try to promise, no, okay, this is the medicine, you take it and no, so like that. These are some very what you call gross kind of cheating, right? So there this kind of gross get, but there is another kind of cheating which actually most people doesn't know, right? So this is little controversial topic actually, but nevertheless, what actually Prabhupada used to say, Acharya used to say is that, for example, many times whatever we teach in the universities, colleges, etc., right? So some in one way they are also kind of a cheating, because see one thing obviously, like for example history, if you take, there are a lot of historical facts which are twisted, right, for by certain people. That is one way. But even the scientific facts also, many things actually, for example, we don't know perfectly what is the real problem. For example, now this virus things are going on, right? So those medical science has advanced to a great extent, but actually there are a lot of unknown facts about how things are happening. For example, cancer. actually, for example, there is a lot of advancement has happened in the medical science, but nevertheless, till still actually we are no, it's more or less no, it's a trial and error kind of approach. So there is a current protocol actually, which is used for treating a particular kind of disease, and no, then the protocol will be revised as and when some new discoveries or new new information is available. So, but nevertheless, what is happening is that in the university they teach in such a way that okay, this is all perfect knowledge we are giving. This is how it is. So and sometimes and the person who is teaching also he is also convinced that this is the fact, and then he teaches everybody this is the fact. But then sometimes quite often it happens that no what is he doesn't know that what he's teaching is perfect. There are actually a lot of limitations in that. So this is a kind of indirect way of cheating, like though we are not the perfect people, but we try to pose that we are perfect, and then we actually pass on the information like that. So so this way unless and until, so that is why Prabhupada very time he was actually very much against people who try to theorize things. He used to say, like, somebody will say, okay, maybe it is like this, maybe it is like that. So now, for example, he gives the example of Darwin's theory of evolution. Charles Darwin, is the theory of evolution, which actually at the time of Charles Darwin itself, many scientists were actually opposing that theory, and now also there are a lot of group of scientists who oppose it. So, but then nevertheless, the majority of the people, we actually still study it in the schools and colleges, right? The theory of evolution. Natural selection and many things actually we still select. So we some of the things may not be true actually. For example, they say that okay, no, once there was a like one professor actually came to Prabhupada, and no, he was saying that our ancestors are monkeys. He was saying. Then Prabhupada was saying, no, maybe your ancestors are monkeys actually, but I know who my ancestors are actually. So basically, the point is that some of the things, right? It's are controversial actually, and there is no it's a theory actually, right? And then if many things are agreeing, then actually that is assumed that the theory is correct, but then it may not be perfect, right? So so this way, so without knowing, actually, there is a lot of cheating going on. Like the person who thinks, he also believes that it is true, and then he passes on the knowledge to others. So so this is one of the defects, cheating propensity. Okay, that's what. Although person is fool number one, he poses himself as a very intelligent. Although he's already pointed out that he's illusion and make mistakes, he will theorize. So these are all kind of, in one way, many of these theories are kind of mental speculation. So somebody may ask, no, then how do we make progress, in the scientific sphere? So is it that only if some knowledge is completely perfect, we can teach others? So this is actually a very difficult question to answer actually. So somebody may say that okay, whatever is the current knowledge, this is what actually is taught now, and then the science is continuously improving, and then as it improves, we also adapt, and we also keep learning. But actually, what Prabhupada used to say that he say that no, science is something which actually this whatever the modern science may change continuously, but whatever is told in the Vedic scriptures, that will always hold good, whether irrespective of the time, place, and circumstances. So why? Because the Vedic knowledge is actually we'll see further that it is actually not belonging to the material world. You see, if the Vedic knowledge was written by another person who is having the 4 defects, then actually that knowledge is also imperfect, right? But actually the Vedic knowledge is, we will see that it is not coming from a person who is conditioned. Okay, so we'll see that later. And what is the last defect is that our imperfect senses, right? So imperfect senses, I think it's not very difficult to understand. We already discussed a little bit about it in the beginning, because our senses, every living entity has limited senses, right? For example, dog has very strong sense of smell. It can sense something which actually is very very far away, but whereas human beings will not be able to know. We have a very limited perception of the smell of sense of smell, but some animals has very better senses. Or for example, some animals are capable of producing ultrasonic sound. They say, for example, dolphins or the whales, they actually produce ultrasonic sound to communicate with each other, and then these sound waves can travel kilometers, and it can inform a whale which is very like kilometers away, using this ultrasonic sound. And even elephants, they say they produce ultrasonic sound to communicate. But actually, suppose we are standing in the middle of some elephants, we will not know, we will not hear anything, because that is beyond our we have the audible spectrum of sound, right? Which actually which is the audible range of sound. So whatever is there, only we will hear. So if the olden, maybe many years before, people might have they would have thought that there is nothing beyond what I can hear. But because of some advancement in the science, now we at least are able to perceive certain things, which actually we are not directly able to perceive. So this way we can understand that our senses are imperfect. right? And then other example Prabhupada is giving, no, like for example, to see, if you want to see something, we need light actually. In the dark we can't see, but some animals can see. Like some animals who are, they call, no, they hunt in the night, right? Nocturnal animals like
Owl.
tiger, owl, yeah. So they actually, tiger and all, they can see in the night. um, so the point is that actually, we have to understand that, we have to admit that there are certain things which is beyond our sense perception, and should be ready to accept that, no, there can be something which is beyond our sense perception. So these are the four defects. So any questions on this till now, on this?
No, no, sir.
Okay. Ideally, in Bhakti Visha, we are supposed to discuss about it more, but because of this more, like it is little not very convenient, to discuss more. So maybe we can note down, and when we meet next time, probably we can again discuss. Yeah. Anybody else has any questions actually, like, or any comments? And somebody wants to add something, to this point till now?
Prabhuji, I have one question, Prabhuji.
Hmm? Yes, Mataji.
The first line they have mentioned like what is Veda. Veda
Hmm.
is something what like in the knowledge, whatever you accept, it is a Veda, like in the first line. Then whatever we have learned from the schools and all, like till our education, whatever finished, is that Veda? We have accepted it. Is it belong like we can tell it is also a Veda, or whatever you accepted is completely wrong, and we missed what we should we would have achieved. We would have accepted good.
See, maybe what
I
could
mean,
have, yeah. So I should not say maybe, but what my understanding is that, see, Veda, the word meaning is actually knowledge. The word Veda, and originally, originally only Vedic knowledge was there, right? And everybody used to learn the Vedic knowledge through a disciplic succession. So at that time, there was no question of another knowledge, which was false or something. Okay, so Vedic knowledge. So that by that principle, the Vedas was the original knowledge. But in the gradually, over the period of time, this knowledge actually is kind of abandoned. People are not, nowadays people don't learn Vedas, Vedic knowledge. So the Vedic knowledge, what we are actually referring is, strictly speaking, so if you go by literal meaning, Veda means any knowledge can be called as Veda. No, Veda means knowledge. But now in the accepted terminology, like, when we say Veda, it actually refers to the ancient, no, like Hindu or the Sanatana Dharma related Vedic scriptures, which are considered as authentic, which actually consist
yes.
of Smritis, Shrutis, Puranas, Itihas, no, and the four Vedas. So all these actually, like there are other things like Samhitas, Aranyakas. So there are different branches of Vedic knowledge. So these are actually considered as the authentic Vedic knowledge, which are consisting of, like for example, chiefly nowadays actually we refer Veda means we are talking about Puranas, Upanishads. These actually branches mostly. So
Okay.
the real Veda, so the a word can be used in different, different what you call contexts, right? So literally Veda means knowledge, but in general accepted parlance, Veda means actually the Vedic knowledge which are actually coming as part of the Sanatana Dharma, the authentic Vedic scriptures, right? So whichever scriptures, so this Vedic knowledge, authentic scriptures, we'll see that in the last paragraph, it is told that it is actually not from this material, it is not written by somebody who is conditioned soul, who has four defects. Okay, somebody might have recorded the Vedic knowledge in the recent time. For example, Vedavyas, Krishna Dvaipayana Vedavyas. So he is actually one of the sages who actually has recorded the Vedic scriptures in the modern times. But we also heard that the Vedic knowledge in the olden times, it was not recorded anywhere. It was always passed on from one generation to the another. So, for example, Upanishad, the word Upanishad means, like sitting nearby, right? So
Okay.
the Vedic knowledge was no, generally traditionally learned in a Gurukul, where the Guru and Shishya, they actually have a relationship in the sense, like between a spiritual master and a disciple. And the disciple used to they used to stay with the spiritual master, serve the spiritual master, and the spiritual master used to give the impart the Vedic knowledge. So generally it was recited. That is why, the Shruti word is coming, right? The Shruti is actually that knowledge which is acquired by hearing. So it used to be passed from one generation to another, and it was told that in Kali Yuga only, the people's memory is so poor actually. In Kali Yuga, Srimad Bhagavatam, it is described as Mandasu Manda Madayo, Manda Bhagyo. So basically, the people in Kali Yuga are dull-headed, or their intelligence is very low, dull, right? Before in the previous yugas, the people used to have memory, like something like a photographic memory. In Kali Yuga also we have some example, like it was told that Swami Vivekananda, he used to have a photographic memory. In a sense, no, if you just hear it once, no, then he can remember it. No, he can remember it. He'll never forget it. So this was available to all the people in the previous yugas. So when they hear this from the spiritual master, they used to remember everything. They will not forget whatever. So because of that, the Vedic knowledge in the previous yugas, it was not recorded. It was just passed. So Krishna also in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, no, in fourth chapter, he says that evam parampara praptam imam rajarshyo vidum, right? He's saying that this knowledge is actually coming through a disciplic succession. Right? He's saying that, what is the shloka? Let me see. Can you check the shloka? Vivaswan, Manave Praha, Manu Ikshva. So basically, Krishna says that this knowledge is coming through a disciplic succession, and first I have given this knowledge to Sun God. So that is only one of the instances. But even before Sun God, the Vedic knowledge was first given to Lord Brahma. Right? Lord Brahma, in every universe, material universe, Lord Brahma is the first created living entity. And Lord Brahma, the Lord actually, the Vedic knowledge is revealed through a kind of how the knowledge is revealed is that no, the Lord actually does not directly appear before Brahma. Only it is automatically by sound vibration. Like it is told that the original Vedic knowledge was imparted to Lord Brahma in the form of sound. In the form of sound of the flute of the Lord. Actually, through the flute of the Lord, sound, this knowledge, the Brahma, the Nada Brahma kind of media, the Vedic knowledge was revealed to Lord Brahma. And then from Lord Brahma, actually, the knowledge was coming through disciplic succession. And then Lord Krishna himself repeats this knowledge multiple times. So Krishna actually also instructed the knowledge to Sun God, Vyavaswan. Right? And then, so basically the point is that the knowledge, we have to understand that the Vedic knowledge, right, is coming from a source which is beyond the material realm. Right? It is not written by somebody who is having the four defects. If any knowledge is written by a person who is a conditioned soul, we can guarantee that it'll not be perfect. There will be defects in that, because they are not themselves perfect. And the perfect knowledge can only come from somebody who is perfect. So there is nobody who is more perfect than the Supreme Absolute Lord, right? Who is the source of everything. He has created everything, the material world, spiritual world, everything he has created, and he actually is giving the knowledge of the original Vedic knowledge, spiritual knowledge. No, the Lord is giving it. So there cannot be. So that is the example. No, one example is given about the radio station, right? So if a radio station, the Prabhupada is trying to say that if there's he's talking about a TV station or a radio station. If there's in the olden times in America and all, television stations or radio station, they used to have a program guide saying that, okay, what will be now. Also in the newspaper it comes, for example, Monday CTV, like 8 to 9, like whatever this program, 9 to 10, something like that, right? So if this knowledge is published by the TV station, then actually that is a perfect knowledge, because the TV station is the people who are in the best position to understand what is the program schedule. So if the knowledge comes from the original source, then that knowledge can be trusted. So similarly, the material world is actually created.
Okay.
In the material world is created, and the Lord, just like a material world, you can think like, we discussed earlier, like material world, you can think like it's like a toy, it's like it's a reflection of the spiritual world, or no, so it's like just like an equipment. There are material laws of nature and various things. So the Lord actually, along with the material world, he also created a manual. We should understand the Vedic scriptures like a manual for the material world. The Vedic knowledge is very vast. There are different sections in material and the Vedic knowledge, which some of the sections are known as Karma Kanda sections, right? So this part of the Vedic knowledge is meant for people who want to materially prosper. So Vedic knowledge is not only spiritual knowledge. Okay, so that is why it is also very important to have a spiritual master to understand the Vedic scriptures. Because if somebody embarks on a journey to understand the Vedic knowledge by himself, he'll be sure to get lost in the entire ocean of knowledge, right? Because there are so many sections, for different kind of people. Right, so it is intended, the normal process of progression is that you have to go through millions of lifetimes, right? So gradually one may progress, like we discussed about a yoga ladder, right? Like karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, bhakti yoga, like that. There are different steps. It's like a ladder. So people who are karma kantis, or people who want to enjoy, or who have a lot of material desires, actually they want to enjoy the material world. They want to attain material prosperity. They want to become rich. They want to become famous. So for this kind of people also, Vedas give certain section known as karma kanda, where actually it will talk about different yagyas. You can perform different yagyas to attain a certain result. Actually, for example, kings olden time, they used to do the Rajasuya yagya. right? Or Ashwamedha Yagya. So these kind of yagyas actually will help them to become prosperous, establish supremacy over the world. So these kind of things. So it is all. So these yagyas are very very powerful. And then if the yagyas were done by a qualified priest, then that result is guaranteed. So even recent times also, no, there are actually yagyas which actually can cause rain to happen, right? Uh, I don't forgot actually what is the name of the yagya. They had done actually, recently, like some years back, actually they had conducted yagyas in South India. So there are some yagyas like that, which can actually please the Indra. Lord Indra is a lot of rain, and if you perform that yagya, and even scientists and all, they were trying to understand what is happening because of sound vibrations happening, how it is happening, and they were trying to study. So there are yagyas actually, meant for different purposes. Okay, and then for Kali Yuga, everybody knows what is a yagya, right? What is a yagya for Kali Yuga?
Chanting.
Yes. So Kali Yuga, the yagya is Nama Sankirtana. And Srimad Bhagavatam says that Yajnai Sankirtana Praye, right? Yachantihi Sumedasa. What is the shloka beginning? What is the beginning of the shloka? Yajnai Sankirtana Praye Yachantihi Sumedasa. Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam Sango Bangasa Shastadam Parshadam Yatnai Sankirtana Praye Yachantihi Sumedasa. So what is Srimad Bhagavatam says that so in the Kali Yuga, the Lord actually appears not in dark complexion. Yet, Krishna Varnam Tusha Akrishnam. He will not appear in the black complexion in Kali Yuga. Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam. Sango Pangasa Shastra Parshadam. He will appear with his associates. And Yadnai Sankirtana Praye. No, he will be chanting the holy names of the Lord actually, right, with his associates. So the chanting of the holy name is the prescribed yagya for Kali Yuga, right? So that is why earlier also, we might have seen some posts in our group when actually there were a lot of calamities which are like now which is happening, right? So actually the devotees used to do the Sankirtan Yagya, and this Yagya is so powerful that it can actually bring a pause to the calamities which are happening, right? When there were like earlier there were like great famines in the 1920s, at the time also many devotees actually in Bengal, they used to take to this Sankirtan Yagya. So and many times it is seen that during time of Jagannath's Rath Yatra in Puri or in other places, or when great sankirtanas happened in a huge congregation, it was actually observed that many times there were rains, heavy rains in very untimely season. It may be very summer, there's no trace of rain, but actually it causes rain actually. So we have to understand that there are many things which is beyond our material perception and logic. But actually it will work, but we will have faith only by getting an experience of it. When we chant the holy names of the Lord, when people are actually, some people are distressed, Krishna says that there are 4 kinds of people who come to spirituality, right? Artho, Artharthi, Jitnasu, Jnani, right? So Artho, Artharthi, Jitnasu, Jnani. So these kind of Artho means somebody is actually distressed. Artharthi means somebody is looking for wealth. Jitnasu, one who is seeker of knowledge, and Jnani, right? Jnani is one who actually Artho, Artharthi, Jitnasu, Jnani, right? So these kind of four people actually comes to the Lord. So so somebody somebody is very much distressed, let's say materially, like he's suffering from some disease, or there are so many problems in his life, family. Everybody has some problem or another, and then when they see that, they may not have initially full faith in the holy names, but when actually many of such people, they take up to the chanting of the holy names, and then they experience that there is a transformation in their life, their perception about the life changes, so then actually they, by experience only, the spirituality can be understood, and only our faith will become stronger. Otherwise, for people who are logically inclined, or the people who wants a logical explanation for everything, then for them it is little difficult to understand spiritual topics. But actually there is no surprise, because by definition we saw that the spiritual knowledge is transcendental, right? It is not something which can be understood with material senses. So because of this reason, we think that whatever the material world we are, that is the perfect representation of the reality. And then anything which doesn't satisfy our logic, which is based on the material understanding of the existence, they will not accept the other knowledge, right? So one of the names of Krishna is Atarka Tarkakrit. Atarka Tarkakrit. So Tarka actually means, one of the meaning of Tarka is actually logic, right? So Atarka Tarkakrit actually means that one who cannot be understood by logic. So that is also, transcendental means also that, right? Which cannot be understood by material senses. So similarly, the spiritual topics cannot be understood from a materialistic perspective or a materialistic logic perspective. So that is beyond our material logic. So only way of understanding spiritual knowledge is actually one is by Vedic knowledge. Like, we have to see, basically, if you don't accept Vedas as absolute truth or absolute source of knowledge, then actually all our knowledge, we cannot accept anything. right? So Srimad Bhagavad Gita is considered as the essence of all Vedic scriptures, right? And then many other scriptures. So if you don't have, if you think that Vedas are written by some XYZ person, some like 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago, just some material conditioned soul, then actually the rest of the sessions or rest of the things which we are going to learn, we cannot understand. We will not have faith in that. So that is why this topic is very important. We have to at least accept temporarily that Vedas are the absolute source of knowledge, and it is coming from not from material realm. It's coming from the spiritual realm. It is spoken by the Lord, Supreme Lord Himself. So if you are able to accept that, then actually the rest of the things will make sense. No, otherwise we'll be stuck at this point of time only. So that is why this topic is very, very important actually. Okay.
Okay, Prabhuji.
So this paragraph we'll just read. Actually, we already discussed. So
Yeah.
anybody has any question about the our senses are imperfect? Anybody has any questions in that?
No, sir.
Okay. So now the next paragraph is we just discussed. Now the Vedas are not compilation of human knowledge. Vedic knowledge comes from the spiritual world, from Lord Krishna. Another name of the Vedas is Shruti. Shruti refers to the knowledge which is acquired by hearing. It is not experimental knowledge. Shruti is considered to be like a mother. So now the rest of the part is the example of mother is given. Right. So this mother example is very easy to understand. I think even the scriptures also talk about this example. Right. So in today's world, no, people may ask questions. No, why can't we do a DNA test? Why should we ask your mother? Right. So this is the kind of logical brain or material knowledge. So let us assume that for time being, no, like DNA test is not possible. So then in that setup, the only way to understand who the father is actually, who is the mother, right? There's no better source than the mother who can tell who the father's son of the father is. No, sorry,
Yes.
father or son is. So this way, so similarly, Vedas are always considered compared to mother. The Vedic knowledge, Vedas are all sometimes compared to a cow, right? Or sometimes compared to a mother. So same way, because mother is actually knowing. So we have to understand, how do we understand this is just like this. It's in a simple way we can understand that actually the Veda, you can consider Vedas like a consort of the Lord, right? So like a Supreme Lord actually is husband, and the Vedic knowledge you can consider as a wife or mother. So because they are in an intimate relationship, she knows exactly what is the truth, right? And then she is able to give us the absolute truth, right? So because Lord is the absolute, he is the creator, as we discussed some time back. No, the Lord, Supreme Lord, who is the proprietor of everything. Krishna says in various places. No, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhoktaram Yadna Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Right? He's saying that I am the benefactor of all the yagyas. Bhoktaram Yadna Tapasam, Yadna and Tapasa, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. I am the proprietor of all the material world and spiritual world. Right? Then he says that Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo Matta Sarvam Pravartade. So I am the source of all the material world and spiritual world. Yeah. So this way the Lord is, so there cannot be a better source of knowledge than the Supreme Lord. And so Vedas actually, we can consider Vedas like an extension of the Lord's energy, or consent of the Lord. And because of which Vedas are like a mother. It's directly coming from Supreme Lord. That is why we should have faith in the Vedas. So that is what the analogy, we should understand this analogy in that way. The mother example, right? So then actually there are more technical things actually, like the knowledge acquisition methods, like inductive method and deductive method. There are different philosophical or psychological aspects. And then it also talks about the three kinds of sources: pratyaksha, pramana, anumana, and shabda. So these are the three kind of sources of knowledge. So pratyaksha pramana means direct perception. So people who are just by going the pratyaksha pramana are those people who will say that no, I will see only what I believe. But then the problem in this approach, actually, now we already know, right? What is the problem with Pratyaksha Pramana? So somebody says that I will believe only what I see. Now, considering what you already discussed before, no, what is the problem in that approach? Anybody wants to say? Try. Okay. So I'll tell. So Pratyaksha means see direct perception. So basically, if I say I will believe only what I see. The problem we already seen, right? We have imperfect senses. Because our senses are not perfect, there are so many things which we cannot perceive. So just by relying on our imperfect senses, we cannot say that our knowledge is perfect. Okay, so that is the problem with Pratyaksha Pramana. Okay, so that doesn't mean that no, we completely reject Pratyaksha Pramana, because to live in this material world we have to depend on our senses. We cannot say that I'll close my eyes I'll close all my senses and try to understand. No, that is not possible. So on a practical level, when you are existing in the material plane, we have to continue depending on our senses. But to understand spiritual knowledge, this material senses or the pratyaksha pramana is not very useful. Maybe for the material perception or material understanding, pratyaksha pramana is very, very important. But for spiritual knowledge or transcendental knowledge, pratyaksha pramana is not going to help. The reason is that our senses are not perfect, right? Then the next one is known as anumana. Anumana means, you might be knowing. Anumana means it's something like an assumption. Anuman. Like, for example, what example is given is that just now we heard the sound of something falling down, right? So now, for example, you are sitting on some other place and you don't know what exactly fell down. Maybe you can assume, okay, you may think that, okay, it's a plate which has fallen down, or it is a glass which has fallen down, or something else actually, maybe something else. So this is an anumana because no, you don't have direct perception, but actually you can, based on your experience of past things, you can try to guess. Okay, maybe it is this, maybe it is that, but there's no guarantee that it is fully perfect. So spiritual knowledge, same way, spiritual knowledge cannot be understood by assumptions or theoretical speculations. By mental speculation, spiritual knowledge cannot be acquired or understood. Okay, so that is why the second anumana also is not actually recommended for spiritual knowledge. And the third one is known as Shabda Praman. So Shabda Praman is actually the knowledge which we are discussing here, right? The Vedic knowledge or the Brahman, the Shabda Brahma, Nada Brahma, or the knowledge which actually comes from the absolute truth. We discussed, right? The Lord actually originally passed the knowledge in the form of sound to the Brahmaji, and then this knowledge is generally acquired through an oral reception from one spiritual master to the disciple through a disciplic succession. So this knowledge, because it is coming through a proper parampara and original source being the absolute truth, supreme absolute truth, that is the only perfect knowledge which actually is coming through the Shruti. So that is what actually, here, that suggestion. And now Vedic knowledge, Shabda Praman, Shruti. So Shruti is actually that we already discussed, right? The oral reception. We have to hear from authority. Transcendent knowledge is knowledge from beyond the universe. So that is very important. See, always see the spiritual knowledge is also known as, there is another word actually. This word is, this spiritual knowledge or transcendental knowledge is known as apaurushaya. There is another way of describing the spiritual knowledge, apaurushaya, which actually means the same thing. It is not coming from a materially created living entity. It is coming beyond the material realm actually. So that is why I know it is written transcendental knowledge is knowledge from beyond this universe. Within this universe is material knowledge, and beyond the universe is transcendental knowledge. All this knowledge is there, but how will you make experiments? It is not possible. Therefore, you have to take assistance of the Vedas. This is called Vedic knowledge. So that is actually today's discussion. So any comments or any questions? Anybody's having? So we'll after that we'll read a couple of shlokas. If you don't have any questions, if you have any questions, please let us know. So far so good. Everything is good.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, so this please actually I'll pass this document. Yeah, this knowledge, this session is very, very important actually, because now this is like a foundation. Because if you don't, so now some people will join later sessions, right? So they will ask the similar questions actually, because if they don't have understanding of this session, then actually then there will be a big gap. So please try to meditate on these topics. This understanding is not very difficult to understand. No? If you are ready to accept that the spiritual knowledge is beyond the material senses, and it is this Vedic knowledge is coming from the Supreme Lord. Only these two assumptions are, if you are able to accept, then actually rest of things there is nothing much. All the other things are some examples to understand that. So we have discussed everything, right? So in discovery there are three questions. What do you understand by Veda? That we already discussed. What are the four defects? What are the four defects? Anybody can try.
They are committing mistakes, illusion,
Hmm.
cheating propensity, imperfect senses.
Yeah, very good. Very good, Mataji. So these actually we should be aware. Then what are the three kinds of evidences for attaining knowledge? Somebody want to try? We just discuss in the end about it. Three kind of evidences.
Pratyaksh evidence.
Hmm? Yes, Mataji.
Pratyaksha evidence.
Hmm.
Shruti,
Yeah, Shruti is a source of knowledge.
source of knowledge. Okay.
Yeah, four kinds of evidence is like we discussed now.
Shabda.
Pratyaksha.
Shabda.
Anuman
Pratyaksha
and
Shabda.
Anum-
Shabda is the last one.
Yeah, yeah. Pratyaksha, Anuman, and Shabda. Right? Pratyaksha is direct perception. Anumana is like assumption. Like and then Shabda is actually the oral reception of the knowledge through a parampara. Is there any difference between Vedic knowledge and material knowledge? What is the difference between Vedic knowledge and material knowledge?
uh, Vedic knowledge is a transcendental knowledge, and material knowledge is what we acquire from our five senses.
Yes, very good. And how do we acquire Vedic knowledge or spiritual knowledge? How can we acquire spiritual knowledge?
Basically, we acquire from the Vedas or from
Yes.
our gurus.
Yes, yes. Okay, very nice. Of the three kind of evidence of acquiring knowledge, which is the best? That is a very easy question.
Shabda.
Shabda.
Yes. Yeah. Now, application is Vedic knowledge scientific substantiate? Is it possible to make it part of our day-to-day activities? So, yeah, this question, this is a little what do you call tricky question. Maybe we will discuss when we meet. So, see, the generally people scientific mean no, we have already see everybody thinks from their actually experience and their perception, right? So, all of us are taught in the school and colleges that what is science. Science has a particular understanding. So then naturally we'll feel that okay, Vedic knowledge is not scientific, right? That is a general tendency, but actually which is not true, right? So scientific knowledge, basically, I don't know what actually the science word science, how the etymology of science, I don't know how it is, but essentially, something which is connected to truth, right? What is truth? What is the real truth is actually the real scientific knowledge. If you think in that way, then actually Vedic knowledge is scientific, because see how we know something is scientific or not is by the result actually, right? So basically various, if you take scientific knowledge also, as we discussed, no, like there are a lot of theories about various scientific knowledges, right? For example, how the human beings came into existence, there is a theory, like the theory of human evolution, or the origin of species, Charles Darwin. Or if you talk about the universe, there are theories which are saying that there's how the universe came into existence. They say that they talk about the Big Bang theory, there is the pulsating theory, the steady state theory. So there are different theories like that. So nevertheless, see, unless so nobody actually perfectly knows whether these theories are perfect, right? So it's all kind of a continuous experimentation. But actually, what is the Vedic knowledge? Acharya says that the Vedic knowledge is always, it will always hold true, irrespective of time, place, and circumstances. Temporarily, it may look actually, it may look illogical, right? But actually, like, on the long term, it is proven. For example, one simple example is Prabhupada used to give is that example of cow dung, right? So nowadays, actually, there's a lot of controversy about cow dung and gomutra, cow urine, right? So some people, if you talk about this word, then they'll label saying that no, we are actually RSS or BJP. So that is unfortunately that is how it is. But see, in Vedic scripture, this cow has a very important role in the Vedic scriptures. Okay, and it is proven that the antiseptic nature of the cow dung, right? It is told that many of the diseases, like for example, many diseases, no, which are actually like viral or bacterial, traditionally in the houses in the villages, where actually they use the cow dung. They used to you put cow dung. They make a paste of cow dung, or mix with water, and then they sprinkle it, or no, they will make a paste and put it on the floor and everywhere. So though actually logically speaking, cow dung is actually something like an abominable subject, right? Because any like stool of an animal or it's considered as abominable. But nevertheless, cow dung, Vedic scriptures actually always talk about importance of cow and cow related um, products. So though it is very difficult to understand how it is working, logically it may not make sense. But actually, this was traditionally practiced in the Indian culture, no, like our in culture for many thousands of years. That they used to put cow dung, and then it has a lot of now the scientists are finding out that it has a lot of antiseptic properties, like so many things. So this is one example, right? So apparently, so it is very difficult to say, controversial to say whether it is scientific or not. But nevertheless, actually, there is a result which is actually available. So similarly, many other things are there. So this is just an example to try to establish this aspect. I don't know. Maybe everybody may not agree with me, but anybody has any difference of opinion?
No,
Raman Prabhu may be having some difference of opinion probably. Raman Prabhu is there in the call still?
yeah, he's there.
Okay. Prabhu is okay na with this?
Yeah, I'll just unmute myself. I didn't unmute. No, I don't have any difference of opinion, Prabhuji.
Yeah. See, because I am not an expert actually in these things. No, I'm just repeating what our acharyas and other people have told. So this is what actually they say. So they say that Vedic knowledge is always perfect. Okay. So now what we will do now, we'll read a couple of shlokas. See, the last question, is it possible to make it part of our day-to-day activities? So anybody has some idea or some suggestion how can we apply the Vedic knowledge in our day-to-day activities?
I think I don't know, but I think Veda in its different volumes, which has been at least written form of
Mhm.
Veda that we have,
Yeah.
it explains. It has got all details from spiritual
Yes.
aspect to how a society has been formed to how it should conduct and all. I believe those details are
Yes.
there. Maybe we don't
Yeah.
have access to them directly, but they are there, I believe. So we'll have to
Yes. Yes.
see.
Yeah, that is one way. Yeah. So even Ayurveda and many other, no, they're all part of Vedic knowledge, right? It's all considered as part of Vedic knowledge only. So Ayurveda nowadays, modern science also, no, to some extent, they accept Ayurveda as one of the bona fide ways of treatment, right? So like that, many other like the archer, they were topics about, no. Yes. So so Mataji, that is correct actually. So we can try to pursue more knowledge. But actually, one thing actually we understand from our acharyas, no, especially in our parampara, what they say is that since see the Vedic knowledge is very very vast, right? And then there are so many, as we discussed, no, we can there are so many areas actually in that, and it is very humanly almost impossible to understand everything. So and then they say that whatever spiritual knowledge which actually we are lacking, right? It is kind of an emergency. This Krishna consciousness, it's an emergency they say because see our life is very short, right? So we don't know, so we don't may not have time for everything, and then anyway whatever knowledge we acquire, we have to leave everything at beyond one our lifetime we cannot carry that knowledge necessarily, right? But only the spiritual knowledge is actually that we can carry. So we should try to focus on the spiritual knowledge which is the topmost, right? We discussed about the yoga ladder: karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, and bhakti. So the bhakti is actually considered as a topmost. So if you are able to directly, like if you have an option of taking a lift and a staircase, and then there is a 100-story building, so it is wise to take the lift actually, right? So because of these things, no, it is better, if possible, like if you don't have full conviction, then it may be difficult. But actually if you have faith, then actually it is better to focus on the spiritual path, and try to know, because we don't have much time, so we can focus on what is most important for me to get out of cycle of birth and death. Because the fundamental problem that I am facing in this material body, material life, is that I have to undergo the defects. No, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi, right? Whatever be my form, when I become, let's say, I become the greatest scholar, even in Vedic knowledge also. See, let's say somebody becomes a great scholar in Vedic knowledge. There may be many scholars now also, but if they don't understand what is the essence of Vedic knowledge, right? Then actually that knowledge may not be very important, very useful. No? So Krishna, that is why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 15 chapter 15 shloka, Krishna says that Vedesha Sarver Ahameva Vedyo Vedantakrit Veda Videkacham. He says that Sarvasya Chaham Rudhi Sannivishto Matta Smriti Jnanam Apohanam Cha. Vedesha Sarver Ahameva Vedyo Vedantakrit Veda Videkacham. So what Lord Krishna himself is saying, the purpose of knowing the entire Veda is to understand who the supreme absolute truth is, right? And so somebody becomes a great scholar in Vedic knowledge, but and he cannot come to the conclusion that this absolute personality of Godhead or supreme absolute truth is Krishna, and he is not able to understand that I am the living entity, I am Jiva, and the supreme absolute truth is no, is actually the Paramatma. And how I find a way to go back to my original destination, right? This problem is that somehow or other we have left our father, our original home, which is in the spiritual world, and somehow or other we have reached this material world. Now the most important thing that we have to do is to go back to our place. Other things, no, other distractions will be there in the material world. So many no informations are available. So if you get stuck in those information, no, then we'll forget our original plan or original need for going back. So the most important thing for the living entity who was detached from the father and came here is to somehow go back. So that is why we should try to use our time best to focus on the essence of the Vedic knowledge, and try to find a way to go back to Krishna. Yes, Mataji. So yeah, so applying Vedic knowledge is very simple. Now we are already doing it to some extent, right? For example, chanting the holy names of the Lord, right? This is actually the Vedic scriptures prescribe the chanting of holy names as the most important means in the Kali Yuga for spiritual realization. Because there are, we discussed earlier, no, there are 4 different paths in each yuga, right? Krideya Dhyayado Vishnum, Tredayam Ichado Magai, Dwapari Parijaryayam, Kalauta Thari Kirtanat. So in Kali Yuga, the only process which is recommended is chanting the holy names, right? Then Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama Iva Kevalam, Kalau Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva Gadaranya. So these are all these quotes are coming from Vedic scriptures, different Upanishads. Kali Sandarana Upanishad is saying that, Srimad Bhagavatam is talking about it. No, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Idi Shodashagnam Namnam, Kali Kalmashanashanam, Matta Paradrovaya, Sarva Vedeshu Dushade. So various scriptures are giving the essence actually. They are saying that in this Kali Yuga, the most recommended process for self-realization is chanting the holy name. So this is the simplest way of applying the Vedic knowledge is the essence we are taking, and we are no, let's say if we are able to chant the holy names of the Lord, we don't know, like just like the example of cow dung, right? We don't know how cow dung exactly is working, but cow dung has the effect. Similarly, even though we don't know how the chanting the holy name may look very simplistic, actually for somebody who is sophisticated, actually this becomes too simplistic, and then they feel that no, it may not work actually. What is there? So they may think that I want to do something more complicated. I want to do, right? Maybe I have to read more books or do certain aspect like that. But actually, the process is proven and then it is given for the Kali Yuga. So just it's very, but it looks very simplistic actually. What is there? Anybody can do like that. We'll feel, but that is the most important, most powerful thing. So chanting the holy name is one thing we can do to apply in our day-to-day life. Then another thing is reading the scriptures. Srimad Bhagavad Gita. No, everybody, all of us can read at least one shloka or two shloka every day, right? Which actually, Bhagavad Gita is considered as the essence of all Vedic scriptures. We have discussed in the beginning, right? There's a shloka in Padma Puran, in Gita Mahatmya. There is actually a shloka which says that Sarvo Banishado Gavo Dugda Gopalanandana Partha Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gita Amritam Mahat. What it means is that if Sarvo Banishado Gavo, if you consider all the Upanishads like a cow, the essence of the cow's milk, right? The cream of the cow, milk of the cow is actually compared to Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So we don't have to actually read all the scriptures, right? If you just understand Bhagavad Gita properly, the essence of all Vedic scriptures, the essence is also given in the 15th sloka, 15th chapter, 15th sloka to understand Supreme Lord. So that is the most important thing. So if you read Bhagavad Gita, there is very much enough actually. So our Acharya says that Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, these are the most important books actually. If you read these two books, then actually we can attain a great level of perfection. We don't have to read other scriptures. Then after that, Chaitanya Charitamrita is also there. So these are the three most important books, because Chaitanya Charitamrita has a lot of philosophical. So some people who are not fully satisfied, just by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita actually gives more philosophical and logical explanations. I mean, more detail about various things, like how the creation is happening, how the material universe coexists. So many things are explained. So like that. So these three books are sufficient for us actually to understand everything. Okay, so I think we are already little bit late. So if all of you have Bhagavad Gita, we can read the chapter 4, Shloka 1. Are you ready?
Just 1 minute, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Maybe on 15 also we can read. Otherwise, if you're using laptop, you can search online also. Vedabase, there's a website called vedabase.com.
Shri Bhagwan Uvacha.
Yeah.
It's text 1 you want, right? Sir?
Yes, Mataji.
Imam Vishwate Yogam Proktavan Aham Avyayam Vivashwan Manave Praha Manur Ikshwake Bravit.
Yes. So yeah. So this is shloka which I referred. So maybe we can read together also. I'll read and you can also repeat. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Imam Vivasvate Yogam
Imam Vivastati Yogam
Proktavan Aham Avyayam
Proktavanaham Avavyam
Vivaswan Manave Praha
Vivasvan Manave Praha
Manur Ikshwagave Bhavid.
Manur
Manur
Ikshva
Ikshwa
Bhavid.
Bhavid.
Yeah, so I'll read a translation. The blessed Lord said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god, Vivaswan, and Vivaswan instructed to the Manu, the father of the mankind, and Manu in turn instructed to Ikshvaku. So basically, then afterwards Prabhupada talks about history. So what is most important is that, so Krishna is saying that Imam Vivasvata Yogam, right? Then after that, next sloka is also very important. So here is Krishna is saying that the first knowledge was given to Krishna has given the knowledge to Vivaswan. The Vivaswan is the name of the sun god, no, which was at that time, right? Now the sun god's name is different actually. What is now? So there are different manvantaras, no, and in different manvantaras there are different name of sun god, like the Chakshusha manvantara is there, then no Vaivasvata manvantara. So this actually this instruction was given to another sun god, I think it was in the previous manvantara, Vivaswan. Okay, and then the next sloka also is important. We'll read next sloka. So evam parampara praptam ima,
Parapraptam
imam rajashayo vidu
imam rajashravo. Where is it?
rajashayo vid. Next sloka it is like 4.2.
Ha ha ha. Imam paramparapraptam imam rajarsayo
यो
vidu.
विदो सकालेन महता
Sahalena
सकालेन
mahata
महता
योगो नष्टा परन्तप.
yogo
योगो
nashta
नष्टा
parantapa.
परन्तप.
Yeah, translation. The supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science, as it happened, as it is, appears to be lost. So here, actually, we have to understand what is the most important point is that Krishna is saying the importance of a parampara. Right, the Vedic knowledge is actually coming through a parampara, and especially in the olden times, as we discussed earlier, no, it was used to come through the guru shishya, the disciplic succession. The guru used to tell the shishya, and shishya will know comes through the disciplic succession. So we have to acquire the knowledge through a parampara. Okay. Now one more shloka we'll read, and then we can after that we can finish. We can go to 15th chapter, 15th shloka. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll read the 15th shloka. I already read it, but we'll read it together. Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto
Sarvasya
सर्वस्य
chaham
शाहं हृदि
hridi
सन्निविष्टो
sannivishto
mata smriti jnanam apohanam cha
matta
मातः
Matasmrite
स्मृतज्ञानम्
jnanapohanam cha
apohanam cha
अपोहनं
prapohanam
च
cha
vedesha sarve ahameva vedyo
vedesha
वेदेश
sarve
सर्वे अहमेव
ahameva
वेद्यो
vedyo
vedanta kritveda viteva chaham.
vedanta
वेदान्तकृद्वेद
kritveda
विद्वेव चाहम्.
sagam
We'll repeat again. Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto
sarvasya
सर्वस्य
chaham
चाहं हृदि
hridi
Nivishto
सन्निविष्टो
mata smriti jnanam apohanam cha
माता
Matasmrite
स्मृतिज्ञानम्
jnanapohanam
अपोहमं
cha
च
vedesha sarve ahameva vedyo
वेदेश सर्वे
vedesha sarve
अहमेव वेद्यो
ahameva vedyo
vedanta kritveda videha chaham.
vedanta
वेदान्तकृद्वेद विद्वेव चाहम्.
सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि सन्निविष्टो
सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि
Sarvasya
सन्निविष्टो
मत्तः स्मृतिज्ञानमपोहनं च
मातः
Matasmrite
स्मर्तुं
jnanapohanam cha
वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यो
वेदेश
Vedesha
सर्वैरहमेव
sarvairahamaeva
वेद्यो
vidyo
वेदान्तकृद्वेदविदेव चाहम्.
वेदान्तकृद्वेद
Vedantakritvedavid eva
विद् एव चाहम्.
So what Krishna is saying is that I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Vedas, and I am the knower of the Vedas. So this sloka is very, very important actually, especially in today's session, today's context. No, it's very important to understand this. So Krishna is saying that first part is talking about the Lord's existence in everybody. Lord is situated in the heart of every living entity. Krishna is saying that Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sannivishto. So I am situated in everybody's heart. We know we have discussed that. No, he's situated in everybody's heart as the expansion of the Lord, the form known as Paramatma. As Paramatma, Krishna is situated in everybody's heart. Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sannivishto. Then he's saying that Matta Smriti Jnanam Apohanam Cha. So he's saying that from me comes the Smriti means remembrance, Jnanam knowledge, and Apohanam forgetfulness. So one thing is that very important. Not only remembrance but forgetfulness also comes from Krishna. We have discussed this in the previous session about it, right? So Krishna, the Paramatma actually is the feature by which actually the living entity is able to execute its desires. The living entity has so many desires, and the Paramatma has two functions: the Anumanta and Upatrishta. Anumanta is actually uh, who is permitting, is allowing the things. The living entity desires, and the Paramatma sanctions the desires. That is one function, and Upadrishta is observing the activities. So Paramatma is recording each and every activity of the living entity, right? So this way the Paramatma is situated in the, this is first part, and second part is more relevant to today's session. He's saying that Vedesha Sarver Aham Eva Vedyo. He's saying that from all the Vedas I am to be understood. Krishna is saying like that. Vedesha Sarver Aham Eva Vedyo. And he says that Veda and the Krit means I am the compiler. Krit means to Kriti means to compile or to write. So Vedanta Krit, he is the compiler of the Vedas. And Veda with Eva Chaham. He's saying that he's the only person who understands the Vedas fully. Nobody can understand the Vedas fully. So this way, we have to understand, if anybody understands Veda, only Supreme Lord understands it fully. So Krishna is the compiler of the Vedas in the form of Krishna. See, Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa is considered as an incarnation of Krishna. So this way, one of the way of looking at it. Otherwise, Krishna has provided the original knowledge of Vedic knowledge is coming from the Lord, right? Lord actually originally given to Brahma. So this way, we have to understand very important topic that the Vedic knowledge is coming from Supreme Absolute Truth. And second is that the purpose of understanding the Vedas is not to get entangled in the different aspects of Vedas. Like for example, not trying to become materially prosperous, not trying to become rich. All these things are also possible in Vedic scriptures. You can you can also become like a Siddha. You can attain Ashtasiddhis by following certain part of Vedic knowledge. You can attain Siddhis like there are 8 Ashtasiddhis like Anima, Mahima, Legima, Prapti, like that. There are different Siddhis which are also very fascinating. But no, these are all kind of distractions in our journey back to Lord. So what we have to focus, Krishna is saying that the crucial or the crux of everything is to understand who the absolute Krishna is. Why it is important to understand Krishna? Because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattva Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mamedi. So Arjuna, Krishna says that Janma karma chame divyam. He's saying that my birth and my appearance and disappearance in the material world are all transcendental. Divyam. Janma karma chame divyam. Evam yo veti tattva. Whoever understands this in truth, right? Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mamedi. So Arjuna, Krishna saying that the essence of this sloka is that whoever understands the Lord, Supreme Lord, in tattva, they will not take birth again in the material world. So this is also connect to the same point, right? So why, somebody may ask, why should I understand Krishna? What do you mean by saying that understanding Krishna is the essence of Vedic knowledge? The point is that when you try to understand Krishna, automatically we will try to understand who we are, right? Who are we? Who is Supreme Lord? Then we'll also try to understand what is the connection between me and the Supreme Lord, right? So this is known as Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojana. These are some philosophical terms or technical terms. The point is that once we understand that I am a son who is separated from my, see, when you understand, you are forgotten that I have forgotten that I am a son of a very rich father. No, that's my original identity. I have forgotten it completely. So when we understand that, okay, this is my father, then naturally there arises an opportunity for me to go back to my father, right? So that is why it is important. So ultimate purpose is of all Vedas is somehow to realize who we are originally and understand that, okay, these are all my temporary sitting, temporary situation. This is not my real father, this is not my real mother. These are all, I had so many mothers and fathers in my so many lives, right? And I'm entangled in this material world, and I'm thinking that, okay, this is my house, this is my car, no, these are my subjects, no, I have to take care of this. So these are all our false identities, just like a dream. We are entangled. So when we understand that, okay, no, suddenly the Vedic knowledge or the understanding that Supreme Lord is the father, we are actually shaking from the dream and understanding, oh, I am not this person, I am actually a son of the Supreme Lord, and there is a spiritual, my original native place is there in the spiritual world. I have to go back there. So that is the ultimate purpose of the human life, right? So that is why it is, it is considered the essence of Vedic knowledge is to understand who is the Supreme Lord. So that's all I think we wanted to discuss today. Just one more small thing is there. To complete the session, we have to read about a small section in the end called Preaching is Essence. You are able to see the screen? Krishna?
S.
Huh.
Prabhuji?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm actually sorry little bit because no, we have a little exceeded the time. Somehow or other, no, it got extended. So I will just read this and we can wind up.
It is bit too small. The print is too small, sir.
Okay. So you're
For
using a
me,
mobile or are you using mobile or a laptop?
yeah, mobile. Yeah, I'm using mobile. Maybe that.
Okay. So
But in laptop, it's okay, Prabhuji.
you
Laptop.
can even if you want, you can little bit zoom. Try zooming it. Is it possible?
Yes, it is.
I can zoom it, but then we'll have to scroll it actually. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So somebody wants to read. Little bit long it is. One of you can read. Nivedita Mataji or Ramya Mataji, one of you can read.
Yeah, Prabhuji, it is not fully covered in my phone. Not able to see it
Okay,
totally the
maybe
page.
somebody's having laptop can read. Anybody's having laptop?
Yeah, I can read, Prabhuji. This is Sujata.
Okay, Mataji.
Uh, O King, it is therefore essential that every human being here glorify and remember the Supreme Lord Personality of Godhead always and everywhere. And for hearing only, all the Vedic literatures are there, compiled by authorized persons like uh, Vyas,
Vyasadeva.
Vyasadeva, who is the
Hmm.
powerful incarnation of Godhead. And as it is ascertained and that the Lord is the super soul of everything, he should therefore be heard and glorified everywhere and always. That is a special duty of the human being. And the human being, when he gives up the process of hearing about the all pervading personality of Godhead, becomes victim to hearing rubbish. It is said here that it is incumbent upon the human beings to hear because the scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, etc. are made for that purpose. Living beings other than human beings have no capacity to hear such Vedic literatures. If the human society gives itself to the process of hearing the Vedic literature, it will not become victim to the impious sounds vibrated by impious men who degrade the standards of the total society. Hearing is solidified by the process of chanting. One who has perfectly heard from the perfect source becomes convinced about the all pervading personality of Godhead and thus becomes enthusiastic in the matter of glorifying the Lord. All the great acharyas like Ramanuja, Madhva, Chaitanya, Saraswati, Thakura, or even in other countries, Mohammed, Christ, and others have all extensively glorified the Lord by chanting always and in every place. Because the Lord is all pervading, it is essential to glorify Him always and everywhere. In the process of glorifying the Lord, there should be no restriction of time and space. This is called Sanatana Dharma or Bhagavad Gita Dharma. Sanatana means eternal, always and everywhere. Bhagavad Gita Bhagavada means pertaining to Bhagavan, the Lord. The Lord is the master of all time and all space, and therefore the Lord's holy name must be heard, glorified, and remembered everywhere in the world, and that will bring about the desired peace and prosperity so eagerly awaited by the people of the world. Srimad Bhagavatam 2.2.36.
Okay. Thank you, Mataji. Thanks for reading.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah. So here actually, so this is an important session we discuss every week to understand what is the importance of preaching. So basically, one part is understanding the knowledge and becoming ourselves, trying to become perfect ourselves. And second, most important than that is actually, trying to give this knowledge to others also. So that is why the preaching is essence topic is there. And here actually today's session, no, they are actually describing a passage from Srimad Bhagavatam, which is connecting again talking about Vedic scriptures, right? And it is talking why it is important to glorify the Supreme Lord, because the glories of the holy name and the Lord actually, just by hearing that, all other living entities are benefited. Not even human beings, even the animals and plants. It is told that even though they cannot fully understand what is being told, but actually, nevertheless, they are also benefit by hearing the holy names. So that is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we heard that his mission was to Yatne Sankirtana Prize. So he used to do Nama Sankirtan, Harinam Sankirtan in in various places actually across like he used to tour South India. He used to go to like Vrindavan, Mathura, like all different places actually, and in Bengal. So we used to have big Sankirtan parties. So they used to go from town to town, villages, etc. So everybody who is hearing the holy names of the Lord, they are all benefited actually. And people know it is like all living entities are actually in deep sleep, right? And then they are awakened by hearing the holy names. So like it is like wake Jiva Jago, right? Gora Chanda Bore. There's a song which says that. No, it is actually calling all the living entities who are sleeping. Sleeping means no, they are not literally sleeping, but they are sleeping from the spiritual knowledge. No, they are all in ignorance, and then they are actually sleeping. They are not understanding their original identity. So the holy name of the Lord and the Sankirtana movement is meant to revive their original consciousness and also to revive them from their sleep, right? So that is why it is very important. It is not described Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. They are actually singing the glories of the glories of the Supreme Lord, right? And then it is also told that when somebody develops interest in hearing the glories of the whole Lord, Supreme Lord, like no, somebody develops interest in hearing scriptures, then their interest in the mundane material things will gradually will go away, because otherwise each of us know have so many, they call it anarthas, actually some attachments which are not really helping us in our spiritual journey. Like for example, no, it may be just like watching the television, or no, watching television means somebody may be interested in watching movies, somebody may only be interested in watching news, for example, or somebody may be interested in watching cricket, or somebody watching in serial, whatever it is. So some many times people find it, no, though we realize that it is waste of time, sometimes no, we are not able to do our duties, but still we are addicted. So these are all anarthas. So but when somebody gradually develops interest in scriptural topics, then naturally and automatically these other interests which are anarthas, which are no, which are not very important, that will automatically go away. Our taste will go away for these anarthas. Okay, and then the importance of chanting is also explained here actually. After just hearing and chanting are the two fundamental activities in the devotional life. Yes, so talking about different acharyas across, so across all religions, no, actually the chanting the holy names of the Lord is always recommended actually in different ways. No, so we can see that even Christians also, no, they also chant on the beats. So different, they may be chanting different names of the Lord, but actually nevertheless they are all trying to connect to Supreme Lord. Yeah. Yes, I think with that actually we are done. Anybody has any questions or comments?
No, sir.
Okay.
Prabhuji,
Yeah. That's Mataji.
Prabhuji, this is Sujata Mataji.
Yeah, tell me, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
I have one doubt actually.
Mhm.
Understanding of this material life.
Mm.
You know, we can know about, you told something like watching, we are spending some time for television and everything.
Yes.
In this material life,
Mm.
actually, as a lady, I'm telling,
Mm.
if you are, I need some work to be done in some other home. If that person said they doesn't know about God, okay,
Mm.
they some simply they are looking at us like
Mm.
as a lady,
Mm.
they are expecting they need to wear jewels,
Mm. Mm.
then only they'll give some respect to the respect. See, the
Yeah.
material world is like that.
Mm.
So in that time, we are forcefully going to that shop and buying some jewels. For me and all, I'll do that only. See, I
Okay.
don't even wear any I don't need anything actually, because we
Mm.
know, as a spiritual person, we know what is jewels in this material life.
Yeah.
But because we have to live in this material life, we need to wear some jewels. That is why then only the other peoples will give respect. I can see
Mm.
that much of that type of people
Mm.
around me.
Mm.
Uh, this is a common one, I think. Every lady, sometimes in some situation they feel like that. So for example, if you are going to see any home for rent also, that
Mm.
owner is expecting and looking something in how they will give the rent. For
Mm.
that, they need some assurance, they should wear some jewels.
Yeah.
so so
I can find some house actually is available for rent if you
no,
want.
no. No, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
My problem is this is very difficult for me, to go to the jewel shop and buying the jewels.
Yes,
But
Mataji.
we don't have any option, because that is even the security also. I'm telling, in all the apartments, the security also, they they will treat the person like if they are staying in the own house, they treat something, and if they are staying in the rented house, and they treat, they treat something.
Mm-hmm.
So how we can manage that time. I get more tension. See, this isn't all waste of time, but waste of time, but still we are spending 1 hour in the jewelry shop and 1 hour doing this and doing that. So how we can manage that one, actually,
Yeah.
that uh,
Yes, Mataji. So this is, you have given one example actually. So jewelry is just an example, right? But
uh,
indirectly, this is applicable for everyone. No, like even somebody is like gents or male, so they
mm,
have all their own ways of how a particular how to show the status in the society, right? For
mm,
example, like if you are not aware of the current affairs, or no, let's say everybody is talking about a football match, or no, today some IPL is going on or some cricket. So if you as a person you don't know about it, then actually you may be left alone. So like that, so everybody, this is a generic aspect that basically
uh,
the question is about what others thinks about me, right?
yeah, yeah,
This is
yeah,
our
yeah.
perception, how society perceives us. Actually, this is a concern for everybody. So basically, in our devotional life, there are different stages by which we make progress. So everybody will undergo or pass through these stages. So actually, when we are sincere in our devotional endeavor, and we sincerely pray to the Lord, then Lord will give us the intelligence and the necessary mindset to overcome it. Actually, so everybody has to go pass through it. So in devotional life, they say that there are different steps. They say that it start like Ado Shraddha, Tada Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhava, Prema. Like that, there are 9 steps in the progress of devotional life. Right? It starts with the basic devotional life. Like Ado Shraddha means in the beginning we have little faith. Then after that Sadhu Sangha, we start associating with devotees. Bhajana Kriya means chanting of the holy names, and then doing kirtan. These are third stage. Ado Shraddha, Tara Sarusanga, Bhajana Kriya. Then after that, Bhajana Kriya comes Anartha Nivritti. So this is the fourth stage in devotional. So it's called Anartha Nivritti. This is the stage known as the clearing stage, where actually we try to get rid of all the unwanted attachments in the material life. So this actually our perception about ourselves, right? We think that okay, I have a position in my society, what others think. So this is also kind of an anartha, which actually it doesn't really doesn't have much value really if you look. But no, sometimes we may be, as you told, we may be just to show others. Actually, we may have to do certain things. So this initially we will have that consciousness. No, we will be more conscious about how others are perceiving. But actually, gradually, when we have a higher perception, right, when we are convinced that I'm going to the right place, my path is the right path, and I have a higher purpose, then gradually we'll have the intelligence, and then we'll get convinced that actually we'll understand that this is not so important. But in the beginning, like all of us, even I was also like that actually. For example, when I have to wear the dhoti kurta, right, like with the Vaishnava dress, I used to be very much what you call shy. I don't want to be like I'll always think that what somebody knows me, if he sees me, what he'll think about me. I'm very reluctant to go to an apartment like, oh, everybody's looking at me, what do they think? So this is a kind of a consciousness, like what others thinks about me. So but then gradually, Lord will give us intelligence. We'll understand that like now also we, as you told, you also rightly understood that it is not so important. But actually, because of our conditioning, right, past perception, it is difficult for us to change that immediately, right? But actually, it will automatically happen when we continue doing our devotional life. This Anartha
Mm,
Nivritti stage is actually a stage will take some time. This is the difficult stage. No, it's one of the difficult stage in devotional life. It will take a long time to clear about or clear all the anarthas. We are attached to so many things actually which we don't realize. It can be very small thing actually. Like for example, just drinking coffee in the morning, or just
mm,
without drinking tea. I cannot do my morning activities. It has become a habit for me. Or
okay.
sleeping in a particular bed, or I want a particular type of pillow, or no, like small things it may be. But actually we have so many different kind of anarthas or attachments. Some of them are very gross, and some of them are very subtle. Some of them may be just mental level, some of them may be at a physical level. So these are all, no, that is why we are conditioned, right? So everybody has this problem. No, it is not, you are not alone in this actually, right?
Mm,
So we have to just have faith in the process. This Anartha Nivritti stage will take some time. It'll take time. Actually, that is why we have to chant. When we chant the holy names continuously, we get more
mm,
and more purified, and then anarthas, our attachments to unnecessary things will gradually go away, little by little grow away. But each person will have a different level of obstacle based on our past karma, because everybody is having a carrying a different baggage of karma, right? For example, whatever karma you carry and whatever karma I carry and somebody else carry, it's all different actually, right? So based on our past karma, somebody may find it more difficult to give up attachments, but somebody who has already done certain devotional activity in the previous life, they may find it very easy, to give up. So that all depends on our individual, effort, and as well as Lord's mercy. So this is a process. Everybody has difficulty. It is not that you are alone. So everybody may not talk openly, but everybody have their own difficulties like this, Mataji. So
okay.
we just have to have faith in the Lord, continue chanting, and just understand that it is not abnormal. It is normal. Everybody has this kind of difficulty, and then it's just a passing phase. Gradually, we'll actually overcome all these problems.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you, Mataji.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any points? I think, yeah, you're taking more time.
No, sir, we are fine. Thank you.
Okay, Mataji. So, Hare Krishna, all devotees who have joined. No, thank you very much for spending the time. And tomorrow evening we'll also another program, our temple program. Center program will also have a live telecast at 5 o'clock in the evening. So I will send you the link, no, if possible. Anyway, tomorrow is a lockdown day, right? It's a curfew, so you don't have any excuse of not watching. So you can join for the program tomorrow.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
Krishna.
Take
Thank you.
care.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.